I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everyone knows things are bad. It's a depression. Everybody's out of work or scared of losing their job. The dollar buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. Shopkeepers can't sell beer. Beer sales are running low and nobody knows what to do. There's no end to it. In our #1 story in the countdown, for the first time since records have been kept, starting in 1959, beer sales are down, and dramatically so. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. Everything's going crazy, so we don't go out for a beer anymore. The shocking evidence, courtesy of Nate Silver at 538. Is there anything that guy doesn't follow? The graph shows the alcohol sales, the red line there, normally recession-proof, other than a noticeable correlation during the recession of 1991, that large red drip in the middle there. But now off-premise alcohol sales have plunged more than 9%. Most of that is from beer, a 14% decline. Sales of wine and spirits have dropped only slightly. Thus, can a beer stimulus plan be far off? But also on the decline, gambling off by nearly 9% compared to a year ago, and lingerie sales are down, meaning you didn't lose your undershirt, while regular old underwear is doing okay. As are movie tickets, increased sales. If you think this displays a triumph of wholesome stuff, consider this: the sale of Girl Scout cookies. They have crumbled. Let's bring in comedian Christian Finnegan, whose Comedy Central special Au Contraire debuts on the 9th of May. Christian, good evening. Good evening.
Lovely to be here, sir.
Why beer as a barometer of the economy?
All right, let's not get... You have to remember, this study really was focused on beer sold for home consumption. And that makes sense, considering so few people are able to stay in their homes now. I think you'd see a major uptick in sales of beer consumed in church basements, shanty towns, and dumpsters.
Yes. Although I don't see anybody out on the street behind me except on here on Friday nights. They must be home doing something.
I suppose so.
I mean, should this be setting off some sort of alarm, unlike almost any other leading economic indicator?
Look, I don't think anyone has their finger on the pulse of America's drinking habits like a traveling stand-up comedian, and I choose to look at the positive. For example, next weekend I'm headed to St. Louis. Lovely town, St. Louis, but based on my prior experiences there, a slight downturn in beer consumption may not be entirely negative. Maybe that means one fewer audience member audibly questions my sexuality.
Well, that's because it comes out of the tap, right out of because of the brewery lines from Anheuser-Busch.
It's an IV drip, really.
Our friend Nate at 538.com suggested that there might be a guilt thing. The quote from Nate is, "This might be a deliberate effort to deny oneself pleasure." Could that be what's really going on, or does that lead us into all sorts of difficult psychology?
First of all, what sort of bizarro fairy tale world is Nate Silver living in where people drink for pleasure? I drink for one reason and only one reason: to stop me from murdering people. But, you know, times are tough. It calls for desperate measures, you know. And let me tell you, man, you do not want to show up hungover to the job fair, okay? When you vomit all over your new Men's Warehouse suit, recruiters don't look well on that.
The government's been obviously trying to bail out banks. The theory that they, or some of them anyway, are too big to fail. What of it is beer too big to fail?
Absolutely. I mean, we're talking major ripple effect. I mean, first of all, without beer, say goodbye to the karaoke industry. Just off the top of my head. You really think Eddie behind the camera here is going to belt out Sweet Child of Mine without some help from the Silver Bullet? It's not going to happen. And then without beer, you're probably talking about the condom industry going down. I mean, Trojan can't survive a nation of unclouded minds. And then that has its own ripple effect. I don't think people understand how much awkward post-one-night stand brunches mean to IHOP's bottom line. I mean, the dominoes just keep falling.
And you spoke of the ripple effect. What about decline in sales in Ripple and other drug wines? Yeah.
If only I'm making up the difference myself on the Thunderbird.
Should the president try to help out on these things? I mean, should he be seen, you know, drinking in public?